Cue Spotlight. Hello all, and welcome to our very first story time. I figured now is the time to tell you about some of my favorite stories from NEU. Oh, I can show you everything I have seen. You just have to be willing to go on this journey with me. Bring the lights up, please. Let me set the stage. Trust me, we are starting off light with this first story. It begins in a small suburb called Geen Oaks. Here in this suburb is where many Geen reside outside of their normal duties. What is a Geen, you ask? Well, imagine a round bird-like creature that wears a protective helmet with a big G on it. They come in many shapes, sizes, and colors. These specific Geen who live in Geen Oaks are nothing special when compared to all of Geenland as a whole. Even though the Geen of Geen Oaks are nothing special, this story tells of one yellow Geen who managed to doom his entire race, continuing a millennium-long cycle. Tell me, does that interest you? If you're still here, I assume my story tonight has caught your attention. Now would be the time to get up and go to the bathroom, as I have a lot to explain. Okay, this yellow Geen I speak of began his schooling at a normal age. He was constantly messing up and missing what the Geen call a bus. His mama Geen had to discipline him often, and was seen cleaning up many a mess left by her baby Geen. Going to class, the other Geen would ignore him, including his teachers. This was completely humiliating. He soon learned that not only was his color, yellow, the lowest on the pecking order, but he just couldn't fully express himself. He always had an awkward smile, but who can blame him when you are born with a beak for a mouth? He began to be bullied, punched, pushed, bruised, and beaten, but he always tried to crack a smile. The other Geen just didn't understand. They were red or purple or white. At least the blues would get bullied too, but even they were given the right to bully the yellows. Their punches hurt the most. Our little Geen had really been through it in his days of schooling. He always got home thanking his helmet for taking most of the blows. His mom would see his bruises, and all he would do was smile. She would caress him and explain, "Everything happens for the best," or "wah, wah, wah, wah," in their language. Really rolls off the tongue, I'd say. Our little Geen took his mom's words to heart, and never let his schooling get him down. He graduated with honors, and was the first Geen to discover the atom. He had been bullied and looked down upon. He had learned of his kind's discriminatory pecking order and managed to pull through. Although we have only cracked the surface of the atrocities the Geen were capable of committing. After schooling, Geen get drafted into the Geen force. Every Geen is forced to join, no matter how well they did in schooling. Our little Geen had to learn the way of the spear. Every day he fought his fellow Geen in sparring sessions, slowly honing his skills. He found the competition fun and exhilarating, though he didn't feel ready to use these skills in battle. It wasn't much longer until he was deployed to wipe out a society of kibi on the cliffs. Just so you know, kibi are birds with long rainbow beaks and floppy ears. They too, like the Geen, are flightless. Our little Geen remembers this day the most. The day he watched his brothers and sisters slaughter thousands of innocent kibi who merely sat on the cliff existing. He watched the Geen force come full strength, even summoning their Drageen, their evolved counterparts. The kibi didn't even put up a fight. Our little Geen was stunned, completely incapable of moving. His fellow soldiers took notice and began to ridicule him. They had no care for our little Geen's feelings and remorse. These evil Geen then forced him to kill a kibi barely left alive by the onslaught. Our little Geen's smile left that day. He became sick of his own kind, a species that had taught of a pecking order, putting him and others at the bottom. A species so cruel it would choose to wipe out all others, rather than grow and harmonize. A species that even looked down on its own, having no appreciation for where they came from. The Geen had proven to be dangerous, and our little Geen decided they needed to be destroyed, and him along with them. In school, our little Geen had discovered the anatomy of the atom, and after his time in the Geen Force, he realized he could put these skills to the test. The Geen Science Division was always recruiting, and they didn't see color. The Geen Science Division was huge. Many Geen never turn into Drageen, and those Geen usually join the Geen Science Division. If every Geen could turn into a Drageen, they would have ruled NEU by now. But anyway, he was a success overnight. Other Geen instantly knew who he was. He was the developer of the most powerful weapon Geenland had ever seen. Other Geen scientists couldn't believe what he had created. With such a weapon, the Geen Force would be capable of taking out any foe. His ideas were so widespread, the Geenix, the ruler of Geenland, wanted to meet him. Our little Geen was ecstatic. His work had reached even the Geenix himself. His weapons were capable of obliterating entire fields from a distance, even an entire city with one big boom. The Geenix wanted it. He wanted these weapons so badly, he forced our little Geen to make as many as possible. Make them all, and they would deploy them at every major neighborhood, ready to send off and obliterate anyone in their path. Perfect, thought our little Geen. All a part of the plan. Our little Geen got a massive group of Geen of all types to work on these weapons, massive assembly lines full of parts needed to split an atom. Drageen came and hauled off the weapons of mass destruction. They prepared them in Geen Force bases on every corner of Geenland, and put one in each neighborhood in caution of trespassers. When everything was put in place, the smile appeared on our little Geen's face again. Wah, 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 he said, as a tear rolled down his cheek. He pressed the detonation button. All of Geenland was wiped out. The entire island split into tiny fragments. Nothing was left. The Geen were no more. And they will be no more for many, many, many years. The end. And good riddance! Cruel, nasty beings, I'd say. If you ever see their population spike, exterminate immediately. Anyway, cue the applause. Thank you, thank you. What a wonderful story, yes? You can still visit Geenland to this day. The natives call it NEU now, but I have a feeling they won't be calling it that for long. Why? Well, that will be saved for another story time. The moral of the story? I guess you could say, treat those around you with kindness, or you might get your entire species blown up. Thank you for coming and presenting yourselves cordially. Please find the exit sign in the back of the room and be kind to your neighbors. All right, see you next time. Cue blackout.